Maybe we should call this one the North American League Championship Series. Between the Toronto Blue Jays' involvement and the Seattle Mariners' close proximity to the Great White North, there will be a metric ton of Canadian eyes from British Columbia to Ontario and points beyond upon this best-of-7 ALCS that begins Sunday night at Rogers Center. And of course, you don't have to be a Canuck to be captivated by the first ALCS to not feature the Yankees or Astros or both since 2016 when the Jays lost to Cleveland. Toronto hasn't reached and won the World Series since 1993.
Now the 2-2. Well hit down the left field line. Way back in. Touch the ball, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.
And the Mariners are the only MLB team to have never appeared in the series. So after this matchup of 1977 expansion squads, the AL will be sending some fresh meat, and we don't mean Canadian bacon, to the Fall Classic one way or another. The Blue Jays have the home field advantage earned from their superior regular season record, and they have a major rest advantage from their tidy ALDS triumph over the Yankees versus Seattle's 15-inning marathon win in Game 5 over the Tigers. These two clubs did have similar run differentials in the regular season though, plus 77 for the Jays, plus 72 for the M's. And the Mariners were a much different team after the trade deadline with a .680 winning percentage in September. Some of the biggest names in baseball will have a big impact on this ALCS. Blue Jays franchise face Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has owned this October so far.
Swinging a deep drive, left field, that ball is soaring out of here, a grand slam!
Jr. strikes again!
With 9 hits, 3 homers, and 9 RBI in the 4 ALDS games against the Yankees. Toronto also has one of this postseason's most captivating curiosities in rookie starter Trey Yesavage, who tossed 5 1/3 scoreless, hitless innings in Game 2 of the ALDS, striking out 11 of the 18 batters he faced, thanks in part to his nasty overhand splitter. As usual, the Mariners will be riding their big dumper, Cal Raleigh, and fellow All-Star Julio Rodriguez in the middle of the order. They can mash splitters, the pitch of prominence in the Blue Jays bullpen. And thanks to a midseason trade, the Mariners even have their own Canadian-born first baseman in Mississauga native Josh Naylor, who is of course no Guerrero, but has emerged as a delightful hell-on-wheels hero on the base paths to go with his power and patience. The Blue Jays will be the more rested ball club here, allowing them to line up their pitching how they see fit. We've seen that work for and against teams in October's past, but the bye in the Wild Card Series round obviously did nothing to slow the Jays offense, which banged out 9 home runs in the 4 games against the Yankees in the division series and benefits from an extreme high-contact, low strikeout approach. The Blue Jays actually struck out only 66% as much as the average postseason team this year. Rest is the biggest advantage the Jays take into this series because the Mariners just expended a ton of energy, emotion, innings, and arms to defeat Detroit in that amazing Game 5 of the ALDS.
The 3-2 pitch on the way, swung out line drive, base hit right field. Jorge Polanco for the walk-off single, and the Mariners are going to play for the American League Championship. The Mariners win the battle in Seattle in 15 innings. The Mariners win it 3-2.
George Kirby started the game for Seattle, and by the time it was over, fellow starters Logan Gilbert and Luis Castillo had both delivered multiple relief innings in the 3-2 win, which was followed by a happy but lengthy flight across the continent. So this will be one of the best tests we've seen of the values of rest versus momentum. This is also a series in which 2 of the biggest storylines revolve around injury. As of this recording, we were flying blind, not knowing whether the Blue Jays would be ready to roster Bo Bichette, who dealt with a late-season knee issue, and whether the Mariners would be able to give the ball to Bryan Woo, who had a late-season pectoral problem. Bichette is one of the Jays' best hitters, while Woo was Seattle's best starter this season, so there's no overstating their importance. When the Jays clinched the ALDS, Bichette told reporters he had made a lot of progress and was optimistic he could be ready to play. but being ready to hit as a DH and being ready to play as a shortstop are two very different things, and either scenario would obviously affect the Blue Jays lineup. If Bichette is only available as a DH, then you could probably expect to see George Springer in right field, where he's played just 9 times since the beginning of August. So that's a strong offensive lineup, but an iffy defensive picture in the outfield. You would also continue to see Andres Jimenez at shortstop instead of second base, where Ernie Clement can again fill in after his monster offensive performance against the Yankees. As for Wu, he was at a point in his progression that would ordinarily lead to a minor league rehab assignment, not a high-profile start such as this. But 'tis the season for accelerated timetables, and the M's might need Wu more than ever after that exhausting division series round. Wu was simply fantastic this season, with a 2.94 ERA in 30 starts, 20 of which saw him go at least 5 innings with 2 earned runs allowed or fewer. Let's talk about some other players who could be X factors in this matchup. For the Blue Jays, it's Shane Bieber. The trade deadline acquisition came back from Tommy John and put up a 3.57 ERA in 7 starts, and his stuff was better than the numbers. But in the ALDS, Bieber was pulled from the 3rd inning of a game in which he was staked to a 6-1 lead. The Jays need him to quiet a Mariners lineup that can be a force, but can also be exploited via the strikeout. The Mariners have 2 important arms who had 2 very different outcomes in the division series. The first is Logan Gilbert, who was not only terrific in that rare relief turn in Game 5, but also met the moment in his Game 3 start in Detroit. Gilbert struggled with elbow issues at the start of the year and never quite reached his peak in the regular season. But with 1 run allowed in 8 innings in the DS, he might be peaking at just the right time now. The opposite was true of Gabe Speier in that round. The lefty is a vital high-leverage option for manager Dan Wilson's bullpen, but Speier sprung a leak in Games 4 and 5, suffering the loss in Game 4 and the blown save in Game 5. They need him to get back on track. Offensively, both teams are hoping past postseason heroes can again step up on this stage. It was a quiet division series for both Randy Arozarena and George Springer, both of whom entered the month with some of the best playoff stats in MLB history. All right, prediction time. The only thing I can confidently predict is that these are going to be electric atmospheres at Rogers Center and T-Mobile Park, because these fervent fan bases have both been waiting a very long time for a World Series opportunity this earnest. If both of these clubs were rolling into the series fresh as daisies, I might be inclined to go with the Mariners here. But given the nature of what it took to get to this point for the Mariners, and the way Guerrero looks locked in, I'm taking Toronto in 6 games. And if they want to go 7, you'll get no complaints from me. Enjoy the ALCS, or the NALCS.